Today's guest on Uncharted Your Sidekick for Life is Ashish Gupta, hedge fund manager turned social impact leader, startup advisor, literacy advocate, and proud karaoke enthusiast. In this episode, Ashish opens up about the two very different halves of his life. One spent chasing returns in finance, and the other building a future where every child has a shot at learning to read. From managing millions in hedge funds to scaling a global edtech company, Amira Learning, Ashish's story is about more than a pivot. It's about purpose. We talk about what shapes our values, how mentorship changes your path, and why we need better ways to help young people and ourselves figure out who we are and what we're built for. Whether you're 18 and overwhelmed or 45 and questioning your next move, Ashish brings insight, heart, and clarity to the conversation. If you're wondering whether it's too late to change course or too early to know, this one's for you.
Welcome to episode 5, season 4.
That's a huge accomplishment.
I mean, that's a lot of episodes in a short period of time.
It really
Lots
is.
of great people. So, by the way, we're going to both enjoy this episode because I already know what's coming, but also think about people that you want on this podcast because we're looking for mentors that can lend knowledge, and that's all this is about. But before we get started, just do a real quick intros for everybody. Go ahead and start, Gloria.
All right. My name is Gloria Park, and traditionally I work in wealth management, but I like to tell people that I help people create a efficient path to achieving what they want. So primarily work with business owners, also working on a book that's primarily a roadmap for helping aspiring and also some seasoned business owners just create a better, find a better way to doing things much more efficiently. So
Can always use efficiency.
Mm-hmm. Hey,
Natalie.
everybody. Natalie Payton Newman. I'm an actor, comedian, podcast person, Natalie, and I'm here to heal through humor.
Love it.
Excellent.
And Dan Dillard, founder of many things, like several things that I've done.
That's right.
The gray hair will tell you that I've just done a few things. And the current project is Founding Up, which is my passion project. And this is the podcast that accompanies that, all about Sidekick for Life. And we'll talk more about that. I'm really excited about our guest today, and Ashish Gupta. Would you kind of talk a little bit about what you're doing now? And then I want to go into your story.
Sure. I can give a really short intro on me and then keep asking questions
Got
and
it.
I can get into. But yeah, Ashish Gupta, I've had kind of two distinct parts of my life or career. The first 20 years or so, I was in the investment management space. I was an investment banker, ran a hedge fund, but all about trying to maximize, I guess, profitability and wealth. And the last, roughly 10 years of my life, I've been really focused on social impact, both as a investor, as an entrepreneur, but largely just focused on helping early and growth stage companies, particularly ones who are focused on improving humanity in some way. And so for the last 5 years specifically, I've been working with a company, help lead a company that helps teach kids how to read, both English and Spanish, but using AI in a way that's meant to be sustainable and scalable and much more affordable. And now with Amira, that's the name of the company and the name of the avatar, Amira Learning, we're with close to 5 million kids across 19 countries.
Wow.
But it's something I'm very proud of. But there's been a number of other organizations and companies that I've helped start or help grow over the last 25 years.
And we'll pause there. How's that for the stage set?
That's so
Isn't that great?
cool.
There's so many things.
5 million kids learning how to read in 2 different languages.
There's I wanted to stop there because I want to give a little bit of more kind of connections here. Natalie's working on, and you can talk about your podcast because I want
Great.
there to be some
Thanks,
synchronicity
Dan.
there.
I have a children's bedtime podcast called Snories,
So cool.
and it incorporates mindfulness and stories that you or I grew up with, but also stories from around the world that are told by people from those cultures. Like we have one from China, told by a Chinese actress, one from India, told by Melanie Chandra. Anyway, it doesn't necessarily teach kiddos how to read, but it teaches kiddos how to ground themselves.
Sure.
And one day we hope to have an accompanying book that will go along with the podcast. Dan, I just got the prototype for my first product,
Nice.
a deck of affirmation cards.
That's fantastic.
Who he helped me in so many ways get that over the finish line, talking to the right people and advising me. But I just got it in the mail.
Awesome.
I'll just say a couple of things to that. Just, the biggest reason why reading scores or reading levels have essentially remained stagnant or declined in the last 2-3 decades, even with all this technology and all this emphasis on teacher training, is one, kids are reading less.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them just don't have access to great books,
right.
And engaging books. And two, simply because kids are reading less kids are reading. The percentage of 9-year-olds who are not able to understand a basic text is like at 65-70% globally.
Wow.
The biggest reason is access to great books,
Mm-hmm.
access to time with an adult or a caring individual who's willing to sit down and reading an engaging or contextualized book to them. So kudos for what you're doing. It's
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah.
Just thought there were some nice connection points there. Okay, so let's get into the story. So typically how we start with our guests, just for the audience to get to know and also relate, because what I found, and I think you and I talked about this over coffee, as I was building the magazine and talking to hundreds of entrepreneurs, I found maps. Very much like, Waze takes you from point A to point B, and it's all maps to get there, and there's roadblocks, and there's different ways to get there. I found that no matter what these entrepreneurs that I talked to did, no matter what background they had or what roadblocks they had, there was always a map that got them around a certain place and got them to show them the bigger. They went from more of a box to like, here's the open world.
Yeah.
I had one of our podcast guests describe it as, before I jump into that, what I found is also very common is mentorship, because it was that mentor. It was, we were in a box to a certain point in grade school, called whatever your education was. And then you don't know what this map looks like because you're kind of like this box. And then along comes a mentor that says, do this, and it opens up the world for you. And that's what I found was common in the 300 plus interviews I've done so far. It was that the importance of that mentorship. And one of the guests that we had on our podcast, and a friend of mine, Dan Graham, says it's likened to, Dan?
Yeah.
It's likened to, just a mentor is like you're in the city and he takes you up to the top of the mountain to overlook the city. And that's, and I thought that was such a great analogy.
It is.
To that. So now you've got the backdrop of what we're doing, why we're doing, what I found through my journey. And so love to start off with our guests is kind of finding out, first of all, what that box looked like for you. Like when you were 10, 13, what did you want to be? And then how did that change?
Oh,
you can
man.
take us through that story. Because it's a fun story.
It is a fun story.
And the reason is that I find is a lot of other audiences in the magazine, the podcast, everything, they like to relate to people and say, they can picture themselves in that. That's why it's important to go back to that story.
So I'll try to be concise because I've been known for having the gift of gab. But when I was, kind of preteen, a couple of things happened in my life that I think were pretty formative in the things that I decided to do. But so one was, my father passed away when I was 13. He died of cancer, but he was a really important figure in the community and just in how he lived his life. He was a professor. But more so, he was a social worker. He really cared about a lot of causes, particularly women's education, big proponent of education, getting the community together to do different things culturally or just have fun. Mm-hmm. And so, even though he passed at a young age, I think a lot of my desire to do something for our community, to lead, stemmed from kind of a lot of his personality and his charisma. And so even as a teenager, I found myself wanting to lead organizations or organize or kind of be the person with the loudest voice in the room, at least. Right. But the other thing that I, if you're asking what I wanted to do when I was young, I actually enjoyed singing. And I was like, I would play football and basketball with the kids outside. But then when we would go to these kind of parent parties or these parties with, families, at least in Indian culture, you would sit around and recite poetry and sing songs.
Nice.
And Indian songs or songs in Hindi. And I actually enjoyed that.
Right.
I would actually be asked oftentimes to sing at different events. I had a decent voice.
I love that.
I never had the talent for that. I was always jealous.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know if I was incredibly talented. I wasn't like formally trained. I had a minor training, but I enjoyed it. I was rare to find someone that's like 11 years old that liked to sing.
And a boy at that.
And a boy. And at that time, it was like, it probably wasn't, it was frowned upon, definitely. It definitely wasn't a cool thing to do. I think Glee didn't come out until I was in college, unfortunately. So that quickly kind of went away to like playing more sports and doing more traditional things that boys that are 15 or 16. But if you were to ask me what I wanted to be growing up, I wanted to be a rock star.
Nice.
I liked being in front of people. I liked entertaining.
And here you are.
I would say today, I mean, one of my most favorite activities to do is karaoke. So we have a group of people that would go.
So that came back.
It came back
full circle.
It was just funny because I just spent a lot of time doing karaoke with my
What's
family.
your karaoke song?
Oh my God, there's so many, both in English and in Hindi, but like, I don't know, Pour Some Sugar on Me, Brown Eyed Girl. I mean, it goes all the way from like Metallica up to like even some more recent ones. Some of the country music stars like Tracy Chapman, Luke Combs. So it's a wide gamut.
Cool.
Creed.
You know how some people have the gift of memorizing songs.
Yeah.
I've never. I mean, I like music,
Right.
but I've never memorized artist songs or anything like that. I could carry like maybe a verse or two,
Right.
and then the rest I just like. Come on.
That's
And so I've
true.
just never had that talent, and so many people do.
My niece and nephew know the words to every song they hear a couple times.
I have a karaoke funny story from when I was like 12 or 13.
Okay.
And this maybe traumatized me, right?
Oh, let's hear it.
We were at the Tri-State Fair,
Okay.
right? And my uncle, and they have this like, they would do the records. You'd go up on stage and you'd karaoke a song and they would record it and it'd be a record.
Oh, cool.
And so one of my uncles is like, pushes me to go up there. And the only song I recognized was Power of Love by Huey Lewis. And I was like,
Gosh.
Good song.
all right, I'll go do that. And I got up in front of like everybody.
The entire state fair.
Well, it was like,
Three states.
it was
That's right.
not all over in front of me, but it was 100 people probably.
Wow.
And I'm up there and I'm singing. I can't carry a tune to save my life. And the only thing, Power of Love is the only thing I can do. Like my memory goes complete. Like I thought I knew the song,
Wow.
and then my memory just goes out the window. And like even though it's playing there, it was just such a stage. And so that kind of did it for me. I was like, this is maybe not my thing.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you shared
I
that.
carry that. With me.
There you
That's
go.
what it is. You have people that have talents in certain areas, and you respect that, and you move on.
Most of life is a process of elimination.
Right.
The
That's
things that
so
you
true.
probably don't want to pursue, and then after that, you figure out, okay, these are the things that I'm good at.
Yeah.
So,
I just learned that we learn 70% of what we learn and retain is through action. So you just said the process of elimination. And so like it's in the doing that we learn. And you and I can talk about that till we're blue in the face about how lecturing does not a good student make. But it's in the action.
totally.
All right.
I was going to just mention, like, even karaoke relates to reading too, because it helped me learn Spanish and Korean.
Wow.
Because I love karaoke. It runs deep in my blood.
I love that.
I love it so much.
If you don't mind me asking, not to not to be stereotypical, but what part of East Asia is your family from?
Oh, Korea.
I was gonna say
I'm Korean.
most of my Korean friends, I don't know of a single one that does not like karaoke.
It's so
Very
true.
fair.
So again,
In New York-
I don't mean to generalize it.
That's
Sorry.
where
but
we would go is K-Town
Yeah.
to sing karaoke.
Exactly.
It's so true. Even in Korea, you just walk down the block and there are these private studios where you can just rent a room and for hours and have a ball in there. Feel like a rock star because there's like disco balls and all these lights and like
Corner of the market.
amazing
Yeah.
sound system.
I love that you bring that up, though, about the reading and how it helped you.
Yes.
Because I guarantee that is how my nephew learned how to read by the age of 2, is because we always had the captions on the television.
Yeah.
And then suddenly he's picking up books and reading. And at first we're like, oh, he's memorized that. And then he would pick up a different book that we wouldn't read so often. We're like, okay, this kid knows how to read. But I guarantee it's from the caption.
There's
And
an idea
something about.
yeah. Oh, good.
Huh?
There
Did
could
I
be an
unlock
idea
something?
there. There might be. I'm thinking, I was just thinking in our product, could we actually have something where we actually ask kids to, have poems or have songs where kids can sing as opposed to reading. But yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. Well, to your point, I know that some of my favorite things to do when I'm going to read something, like if there's a way that it's being read and the captions are there as I'm reading, I'm learning 3 ways and so much faster. And I'm also learning pronunciation and different things. And so one of my favorite ways to read the Bible is like I just have it play as it's reading, and it's at a speed. So I got to like go to like 1.6 or almost 2 to read as fast as I read. But then it also like all these difficult words that I wouldn't know how to pronounce is like, boom, done. Okay, cool. And so there is something to having it read to you and displayed at the same time as you're reading that
so
has
true.
you memory just like exercise. Okay, back to your story.
Okay.
So now we're at football and basketball, or football and what?
Well, I was mostly into basketball and soccer, but
football in another country is called basketball.
Soccer. That's right.
So then you're at this stage, and then where do you go from there? Is it college? Do you have an idea what you want to do in college? What does that framework look like?
Yeah, no, it's I think had my father been alive, I would have definitely gone into medicine. His dream was all 3 of his kids be doctors, marry doctors, and open up a Gupta hospital. That's
wow.
vision. And
then hire Sanjay and
exactly. Yeah.
him on board.
Sanjay Gupta is actually my uncle.
Are you serious?
No, I'm joking.
I love him.
He's great though. He's great.
Was that? I feel silly, but I
No. It was a joke.
Okay, good.
But yeah. So, but I think I say that only because I decided I wanted to follow the money in high school, and said I wanted to do something either business or law related. And so I applied to a few schools. I didn't really have a great sense of what I wanted to do until probably my freshman year in college. And I was like, I want to pursue something in business. And I saw a couple of folks, a couple of mentors, a couple of older classmen at UT that were doing something called investment banking. And it seemed like they were doing reasonably well and learning all about business and doing well financially. So I was like, okay, I'll probably do something like that. But I had applied to 4 colleges coming out of high school. Unlike today where kids apply to like 20 or 25, right? It's kind of the average. But and I had gotten into 3 of the 4, Penn, Rice, and UT, and didn't get into MIT, and wanted to stay close to home because my mom was single and it didn't get really a scholarship to go to the other 2. So UT was a great choice, and it's where my sisters, my wife, who I met at UT, went to, and it was a great school. So went to the business school there, and to be honest, Dan, I don't know if that was the right choice for me.
Right.
At that time, I think I was just focused on, okay, how can I do well financially? And I don't know if I had to do it over again, or if I advise others who are, part of this, I think podcast is to be a mentor, or to give advice. I don't know if I would recommend finance or marketing or accounting as an undergraduate major. I think it's great for certain folks, and if that's what they want to do, that's great. But I think having a degree in one of the hard sciences or engineering, frankly, I'm one of the few people who thinks having a liberal arts degree from a great university is a great stepping stone as well, right? The issue is if you want to pursue graduate degrees in business, I don't know if you want to pursue an undergraduate degree in business because it may handicap your ability to actually learn something more in graduate school. That said, business majors do well. They do financially well. But I think there's other avenues to learn how businesses work. But anyways, that was my pathway in college.
I want to pull on that string a little bit, just because what I realized in wealth management, as I was one of the problems when I was in wealth management and talking to students and parents about funding college and whatnot is, and that's part of the things that we're solving with Founding Up, is trying to find what are we designed to be doing? Because every one of us has a spark in us that'll make us happy. But so many of us, so that mapping system isn't there yet. And so many kids going into college are like, okay, do I follow the money? And that may not be where my heart is, but that's like,
it's practical.
And so what's interesting is we were doing a bunch of, talking to a bunch of kids at A&M earlier, I guess maybe late last year. And so I remember talking to one in particular, and she was like already freshman going into sophomore, and I asked her, how she's, what she's going to be doing, all that, and she was so stressed out. And she's like, because getting into college was fine. I think I've got this idea of what I want to do. But once you're in there and money is going out the window, and like my parents' money, and now the stress starts happening because I don't know what I want. Like there's this pressure of not knowing what you want to do.
Dan, you're saying it. Well, it's a real problem. When we went to college, the cost of college versus the income you were making, that ratio was significantly different than it is today, right? Yeah. You could actually have a degree in psychology or biology and go to graduate school or have a job, and it wasn't as hard of a decision because the cost of college may only have been $10,000 or $15,000 over the course of 4 years, right? Whereas now today, many colleges are charging $60K plus a year. Right. You're essentially priced out of, again, unless you belong to a really affluent family, you're priced out of getting a liberal arts degree. You have to get something that's in the hard science or in engineering or in business and get a job.
And that was what I
immediately
heard,
after.
Yeah, that's what I heard her saying. She was like, well, I wanted to do this, but now it's like, now it's time to get serious and make a decision. And it kind of saddened me.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, that flame is dying.
Yeah.
Because it's like, here's what I want to do, but I don't think that's realistic. I don't think that's practical. I need to go be an accountant or something. Right. And then it goes to my mind, because I've also, go in the practice of wealth management, in working with thousands of families, you have those people that worked 40 years as an engineer or 40 years as an accountant, and they're not happy. They're just like doing the thing because that's what paid the bills. And you just look at this cycle. And so, so that's, I guess, that commentary was to set up this question for you is, I know that, and we were just talking about some of the advice you give entrepreneurs and everything else, but do you have any advice, since you went down this path and you followed the money, do you have any advice for students, given the pressures they have now, as to what they should, should they follow their heart? Should they follow the money? What should they do?
Yeah, it's a really tough question because, I have 2 teenage kids, right? Mm-hmm. And this is a conversation I've had so many times with other friends who are parents. Mm-hmm. And my own views on this have changed over the last 10, 15 years. Early on when I was a dad, I kind of under-indexed on joy and happiness and over-indexed on excellence. Mm-hmm. Didn't really care so much about what if you wanted to be a chef or an artist or an engineer or a physician, whatever fits in with your skill set, your natural inclinations, your talents, you should pursue, but you should pursue it with vigor, and you should try to be the best at whatever you're doing, because only then will you find something. I mean, any profession can be commercial and you can put food on the table as long as you're doing what you're meant to be doing, right? And, I still believe to some extent that's true, but I definitely index more on the joy and happiness part, but with the caveat that if you're wanting to pursue something, if you have a talent in something, let's say, that is a high risk talent, or it's a talent that, when I say high risk, meaning that only a very small percentage of people, if they do well, can they do really well, and everyone else end up starving or not able to put food on the table. And this actually goes parallels well with entrepreneurship. Give yourself a timeline as a parent and as someone who's pursuing it. Say, okay, I'm going to try this out for 2 years. Let's say it's someone who's a really good soccer player. And we see this with athletes a lot, right? It's, if you want to pursue it professionally, like it's a very hard and long road, right? And so give yourself a time frame of what you want to see yourself doing in that time frame. If you're a musician or an athlete, after that time frame, assess where you are, and if it's something that you can make commercial or be self-sufficient with, then continue to pursue it. If not, then
pivot.
You have to fall back and pivot on something that maybe is lower risk. And again, I think you should always know yourself well enough as a teenager, or as you coming of age into, and this is where I think parenting is really important, is as parents, we should observe what our kids' natural inclinations and talents are. Are they a relationship person? Are they good with numbers, right? Are they using their right brain or their left brain more? Are they, how can we help them with their critical thinking skills? We have to guide our kids in that way and say, okay, I've observed different aspects of your life from childhood to now, and I've always noticed these certain traits or tendencies with you or others. And based on that, and I think this is where perhaps your company can really help folks, but based on those natural talents, those the inclinations and those the things that you're interested in, you can create a list of professions that some being more commercial than others for somebody.
Yeah. So I really like how you frame that, and it fits well with kind of how I look at things. There was a couple of learnings that I had over the 25-year career I had in financial planning. One of the learnings was parents aren't as well equipped to, it's not like 3 or 4 generations ago where if you were a blacksmith, your family just became a blacksmith. And I am an expert at this and I'm going to give you the business, right? Now it's like, I want to do this and I'm an expert at this, but my kid wants to go do that and I have no idea.
Sure.
So, so that was one issue that I found that I thought, and that's what we're solving with Founding Up, is creating the maps that help parents and kids get where they need to go. So I love the idea of parents need to be more aware of it. Yeah, we're not going to be experts at if a person wants to be an engineer. I'm not an engineer. I'm in finance and other things, but my relationships in engineering, I could point my kids to that.
Absolutely.
So having that mindset is really great. The other thing that I really liked that you said is the focus for a couple of years. What I've done for my daughter, what I noticed happening with society was it was a kind of a box system. It's like, here's the system. Here's how things are done. You go to school, you go to college, you do this. Like, here's what's expected. It's almost like the societal peer pressure. And the one thing that I didn't want to have for my daughter was that peer pressure. And so I love the idea of gap year. I love the idea of, I think about the brain still developing and figuring this out. And I think about this from a financial standpoint. I think you'll appreciate this. I found myself helping families, Wall Street, saving for college. And at 18, when I saw the family say, "Here, son, go figure yourself out in college," right. It went to Vegas. You follow me?
Yeah.
At that point,
it is speculation at that point. You're right.
Point, I'm like, this is no longer an investment. This is just like slot machine.
Yeah.
And I saw some of those degrees that came out of that, and I was like, okay, that's not going to be used.
It's hard though, right? Because as a parent, you want to be supportive of your kids. You want to be supportive of education. Yeah. But then in the back of your mind, you're like, I'm spending $150,000 on what? And
exactly,
you want to have some influence, but you also don't want to have too much influence because you want them to find their own path. But to your point, there needs to be a way for a student and a parent to find that right path.
So my thought with my own daughter was just I pulled the pressure away, and even though she'd come home from high school like in tears sometimes because there was like these colleges that had visited her and all these people had all these plans, and she was just like, I got to do that. And I would just say, hey, let's take a chill pill. They're not your parents. This isn't the end of the world decision. We can take time to make this happen. And I would always point to her that people often graduate in the late 20s, not early 20s. You've got some time to make this happen. So I always kind of supplemented or the grace of time. So you've got time. You don't have to do it this way. You're not going to fall behind.
Yeah.
And to me, it was always a better financial and just a better decision to like be ready for it. Like you're in investments, this is like, you don't just throw money at the wall. You like study and make sure it's the right timing. And then you go with that. So
I'll just add a couple of things, I think now that you were also going to say something.
I'll jump in it after.
But again, I'll try and be concise on this, but like I look at my 2 kids, right? Son, intellectual horsepower pretty high. He gets stuff quickly, right? He does well on tests. Very indecisive, still doesn't know what he wants to do, uses both sides of his brain. He should go to university that gives him a lot of choice, at least in that first year, where he can take a lot of different classes and kind of figure out what he wants to do in a way that makes sense for him, but also know that, okay, can he use both sides of his brain in a way that makes sense? Like something like architecture would make sense in that way, right? Because you're, again, using both the the creative
Rhode
side.
Island School of Design.
Exactly.
That's what came to my brain.
Daughter, different. School comes a little bit more difficult, very decisive, loves tinkering with things, like loves puzzles, can sit for hours on something and patiently do and work through something, right?
That's what you think.
Yeah, could be, or it could be she's more of your traditional engineer, great problem solving, very patient, loves to solve problems, but there could be a wide range of things, but hers is going to be targeted. Not every environment for her she's going to excel in, right? She wants to actually go somewhere international. So somewhere that's probably more technical, but it may not be the best university in the world, right. But she's going to find a pathway that I think is going to really work for her, but that caters to that right. aspect. Two very different kids, but there's opportunities for both of them to thrive, but in completely different environments. If you forced my daughter to do something where she had to get great grades to get to medical school, she'd be miserable, right? Because I know that's probably not where her mindset is right now or her natural skill sets. But if you asked her to study mechanical engineering and build something in robotics, she'd be so much happier potentially, right? Yeah. I'm just saying as an example of just observing your kids, right?
It's so true. I was just going to jump in and say that a handful of my cousins' kids are graduating from high school this year, or just did, as of this week. And I want to encourage them that like trade school is an option as well.
Absolutely.
Like one of my cousin's kids, I'm going to take to the esthetician school to tour and look at that because that's what she's interested in.
Yeah.
And another one of them is interested in modeling and performing, and okay, go for it. Try it out. Give it a timeline, like you said. I love that. But then I also wanted to share that I just heard a story from one of my mentors. They were talking about their daughter literally freaking out that she doesn't know what she wants to do when she grows up. And she's a sophomore, so she's going to be a junior next year and then do all the SAT stuff, if that's still a thing. Does that still happens?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. But she was like, so-and-so already knows they want to be a dermatologist, and so-and-so already knows this, blah, 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 blah.
And it's okay to not know what you want to do when you're 15.
Exactly. And they're like, and so-and-so's going to change their mind 1,000 times as well.
Exactly right. That was my daughter at that age, for sure.
Right.
So she knows she wants to get into sports, but maybe she wants to be in the public-facing arena, like be one of those cool women who, commentates on the games or sports marketing. So she's navigating that. But my heart went out to her because it's like, you don't have to know right now.
That's right.
But explore, try things on, process of elimination.
Just a parallel to entrepreneurship or to those that are starting a business also, so many people don't spend enough time in that exploration phase. They don't know actually how to explore, how to do research. They think they're wanting to make a decision. Oh, this is a great idea. I'm going to pursue a business in this, or I'm going to pursue a career in this. And when you ask them just even 4 or 5 questions, poking at why, they kind of freeze. Or they haven't done enough research on, okay, well, do you know these 3 companies that do exactly what you're doing? How are you going to set yourself apart from those? Like, oh, I didn't do the competitive analysis. Or, did you do enough self-discovery on the things that you enjoy and are good at to understand? Maybe you shouldn't pursue the military because you're afraid of the dark and you don't.
Right. For example,
that's not really what your skill set is. So, anyways, in that way,
maybe
I think
don't be in
right.
submarines.
Yeah,
right. Exactly.
I saw a show the other day where these guys would in this old submarine would get shot out of these.
No.
Torpedo shoots.
I just watched Mission Impossible.
No way.
Totally.
To follow on your point, and what I wanted to say all that as well, it reminded me of a conversation we had with a client at one point. In that, and also ties all this, some of the things that we're teaching at Founding Up is the micro learning is so important. So this, if you're interested in this, go explore that. Go take a Coursera course in this and see if it just start developing that. A trade school is a shorter period of time. It's a lower investment of your time, but go see if it's what you are.
Right.
But then I also couple that with don't stop.
Right.
It's like, don't think. So I think so many people is, I'm going to go do the trade school and that's it for me. Like, I'm going to be this career in this. One of the conversations that we had, I remember a few years ago with a client where wanted to go into cosmetology and hair open a barbershop. And one of the things that we discussed with him is like, that's cool and awesome and all, but have you thought about taking that to the next level and having a chain of barbershops? Because now you go into this financial freedom realm versus having to be there every single day. And that opened up his mind. He had never thought about that. So it's like this one, it never stops with the trade schools. Like, do there, but what else can you leverage to continue down that path?
Cultivate lifelong learning.
That's so true.
As an actual, skill or a habit. Right?
That client's actually very successful in what he does now and is thinking that way. Like, that's the next step. So
I love that. And you were talking about that before the show. Like, as I love to encourage people with this kind of stuff too,
Mhm.
because even my husband's barber, he only goes to one barber. And he was like, man, just open up your own shop. You're so good.
Right.
Everybody I know I send to
Yeah.
for like his wedding party gift, he got everybody, a tune-up
Yeah.
at this thing. Well, now he's opened up his own shop, and he's like, thank you so much for encouraging me to do that. Another guy I know worked in the recovery world, and I was like, you have such an eye for photography. He messaged me the other day, like, thank you so much for encouraging me to go out on photography. I just
That's
broke my
awesome.
first 100K year. I was like, yes.
So I think a lot of folks that have jobs, so to speak, as a barber, as a photographer, the concept of opening up your own business is like, oh my God, that seems so daunting. And
Yeah.
I just
Scary.
I just want to do this. I don't want to handle all the business. I hear this with physicians or with optometrists. Or like, I just want to work for somebody else and don't want to open up something. And that's totally fine if that's what you want. But I don't think they fully appreciate how, I wouldn't say relatively easy, but you can still focus on what you do well
Mm-hmm.
and start a business and outsource a lot of those other aspects.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
of-
duplicatable tools. For
Yeah,
sure.
What I
and
think if-
oftentimes the positives of controlling your own destiny, controlling your own time,
Yeah.
end up outweighing that fear, that risk aversion around doing something on your own, right?
And some of that will come with time. You're going to get. We had that guest on our podcast not too long ago, where she had her own shop. Or not. She started out as an employee,
Right.
and then after a number of years, this is not going to last. My whole body just won't be able to take this, and so she started building companies and has done very well. I want to jump because I know we're 20 minutes. We're 20 minutes away from the end of the hour, but now I want to jump to the part of the conversation where mentorship happened for you, because you had these ideas. You went to college. You started down the path of, and for the first 20 years, you had the career in hedge funds. How did mentorship shape and help that? And then part two of that, how did once you got to, I've done this for 20 years, how did you decide to bail and move to the next thing?
Yeah, it's
so different, your next thing, by the way, like going into teaching how to read is very different from hedge fund management.
Yeah.
completely right.
Yeah.
I'm kind of an anomaly in that way, right? Most people will make a
Wolf of
gradual
Wall
shift
Street,
or
Mr. Rogers.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, right? So I don't necessarily have a great answer to your question around did I have a formal coach or a mentor that's kind of been throughout my life that I could
several,
kind of point to? But I definitely have had several people that have been influential. I definitely think I need to do a better job of seeking out more mentors. But I would say in general, just in terms of my pathway, I actually didn't go into investment banking right away. I had a .com idea. I actually worked at a company called Trilogy as opposed to going directly into investment banking because I had that entrepreneurial bug to some extent. That same trait that I kind of had in high school. And it's kind of what wealth fronts and Betterment are today, the whole concept of a robo-advisor.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, middle-class America or low-income America shouldn't have to spend money on a financial advisor. Sorry.
Right.
Just saying. But
Hey.
there can be a way to codify and digitize or automate that process. And so spent a year and a half trying to build something out in 2000, and then for those that were around then know that the .com bubble burst, and I wasn't I guess brave enough to continue on this pathway to start something, right? And I went back into doing what I was trained to do, which is investment banking. So maybe one nugget of advice is, had I had a mentor or a set of mentors or a support system back then, and maybe I could have pursued it, right? Or had I had maybe even a different upbringing that wasn't a risk-averse upbringing, do something that can put food on the table right away, do something practical. Don't take the shot because you could be out of a job for a long period of time. That informs a lot of people's decisions, and there's no right or wrong answer to it, right? But I think the decision I made at the time was, look, I don't have a way to support myself if I continue on the startup path. Let me go back and actually earn some money first. And so, I think my first mentor was a first investment banking job I had. He was an older gentleman, wonderful mentor. But what was great about him was he had done also a number of different things in his life. He was a petroleum engineer, and then went into kind of banking later in life. was also, someone who got married later and had kids later in life. But what was great about him, and I'd say with any mentor or any boss, is he didn't micromanage, right? And he just provided a great perspective on a lot of different things. So to your great analogy that Dan gave earlier around giving a bird's eye view, I think this is advice I give to anyone going into any job, whether it's investment banking or consulting or whatever, but seek out somebody that you can meet with once a month or once every 3 months, have lunch and just ask them questions. In certain professions, you get so bogged down in the minutia of creating pitch decks or, staying up till 2 a.m. doing stuff, whatever, that you don't see the benefit of spending even an hour or 2 hours every few weeks with somebody to give you great perspective. And I think I had a couple of mentors at that first job that I was at for a few years that gave me the perspective of, hey, this is an advisory role. If you actually want to do well financially, instead of teaching people how to play poker, you need to be the one to learn how to play poker, right? So it's a concept of being an investment manager versus an investment advisor, right? Or someone that's running a hedge fund or running a company versus someone who's advising. And for me, that resonated with me. And so when I had the opportunity, I moved from what's called the sell side, investment banking, to the buy side, which is running an investment company. So again, found a couple of folks. The three of us started a hedge fund initially. At that time, I was kind of in my late 20s and was very scary because I was doing well financially, well enough. So the opportunity cost, and this is, again, I'll just share some nuggets of perspective. Oftentimes with folks, the opportunity cost of switching or doing something different is too high. And so, but when you feel that tug, like I can't be, I'm making $150,000 as an engineer or in whatever profession I'm in healthcare, but I've had this tug to do something different, to do something else, but I can't because I'm doing well enough in what I'm doing.
Right.
What is it that's going to cause you to make that change, right? And again, having runway, having a great support system, understanding what your vision is and what you want to achieve in your life. And for me, I think my wife was a great support system. She's like, look, you've always wanted to run your own investment company. It's what you've been talking about. It's what, when you had your first job, you've always wanted to run your own company. We had our first kid during that time. So there was a lot of reasons to say no, but she gave me the reason to say yes. And first year or two, we were kind of putzing along, wasn't taking a salary, kind of draining all our savings living in New York. But then, magic happened, so to speak. And it happens with a lot of folks that just know what they want to do. They're doing it with the right people. They have the right strategy. So that's when, that hedge fund took off. And that was kind of my first avenue to generating wealth.
Right.
But for me, wealth wasn't, I think, in my 20s and 30s, and even as a teenager, as I mentioned, kind of the pathway that my father kind of carved for us, which was, sorry guys, this guy's called me like 3 times, and hold on just a second. It's okay, I'll call him later. Was, just always do something for your community and give back to your community and do something that's kind of important. So I think my struggle always in the financial world was I wanted to do something that would have a bigger impact, a larger impact. But I had this other struggle, which is I wanted to make enough money. So you have two paths. You can do extremely well financially and then decide to give a lot of that money away philanthropically, or what you do for a living can have a lot of social impact. And so I decided to do the first path, which is I'm going to generate enough wealth. And then from that, I would try and help my community or the global community. But I think when I was running my hedge fund, I got to a point in my mid-30s where it became a grind and it wasn't enjoyable for me.
So wealth turned into something different for you.
It did. And for me, it was, I was happy with a certain number. So for some folks, that goalpost keeps moving. If your goal is strictly financial, is $1 million enough? Is $5 million of net worth? Is $10 million? Is it 20? Is it 100? And so what one struggle is, unless you enjoy what you do. So that this is irrelevant if you actually love what you do. But if you don't love what you do and you want to make a shift, what is that number in your mind where if you want to reach some level of financial independence to make a switch? And so for me, I achieved that number in my mid 30s, mid to late 30s. And so I was like, I want to do something completely different. I just want to spend my time being a mentor, helping entrepreneurs, helping early stage companies who need capital, need advice, need perspective, or need connections, and spend my time doing that. Having really no idea what that entails and not having any formal training. But I was like, look, I just want to do something that is mission driven. And if you're asking me what the reasons for that were and why didn't I continue to pursue the hedge fund field, because economically that was a much better decision for me. I think it was a lot of my upbringing, a lot of my own personal belief of just doing good and doing something important for the world. And I have no other basis for that other than certain mentors that I've had in my life, spiritual and otherwise, the people that I've respected. The people that I've respected aren't the ones that have generated extreme wealth or aren't the wealthiest business people. A lot of the people that I learned to respect over time were humble people who, some of them who did well financially, but ultimately were just good, kind-hearted people whose entire mission was to just make humanity a little bit better. And I gravitated towards respecting those people more. So I wanted to become more like them. So that's a long-winded answer to your question.
No, it was great. And I didn't and wouldn't have asked that question of you because I know. It's something that's, and I'm glad that you shared, but something that as you get to a certain point in life, wealth was one metric. It's just a metric, but it doesn't create happiness or purpose.
That's right.
It's just a tool. But there is in certain people there's calling, and the calling, no matter how you try not to answer it, it keeps ringing. It keeps knocking on the door, and that's what I'm hearing you, because I experienced the same thing. I mean, the reason that I'm following the path that I'm following is because I can't say no to it. It's just one of those things that's inside. It's got
so loud,
and you get up every day.
Yeah,
and this is the mission. This is the purpose. This is what the world needs. This is you find your own place in society of why you're here, and once you find that, it's nothing else matters. You just continue down that path to achieve that goal. So, but that's why I didn't. I knew exactly where you were coming from. But that's a wonderful story, and I'm happy that you shared that. And with that, is there any other thoughts? We're kind of running out the hour. Questions? Anything that you have for Ashish? I have one final one, and we've got about 5 minutes. And so my final question is now around Amira Learning. So you went from, okay, I want to go help all these companies and do these things. And we talked about some of the entrepreneurial lessons that you give, to college kids and stuff. But then there's this one company.
Yeah, that's true.
That called you, and you went from not only advising, but you went to actually to go
work there.
Oh, that's how that happened.
And so, tell me how that calling changed for you.
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I'm going to be kind of transparent, which is I'm not sure if Amira is the end game for me, so to speak, right? It's still part of my kind of journey of self-discovery. But, about 5 years ago was one of the companies that I was an early investor in, just like a dozen other companies that I was investing in. About 15 years ago, I started getting involved in an organization called Pratham, which is now the largest nonprofit focused on foundational literacy and numeracy. They focus mainly in India. And just really enamored with that organization, philanthropically and personally, was spending a lot of time with them. So I had already kind of made somewhat of my personal passion to be around education or early years education, and just really focused on that on a personal level. So when I invested in Amira was trying to help kids learn how to read and accelerate reading fluency. for kids in the U.S., it was already aligned and attuned to what I was doing personally and philanthropically. And when I got to know the company and the CEO and the founder and kind of the help that they needed both financially, and I saw what this product could do for kids in third world countries and developing countries, in countries like India and South Africa, I was like, this is fantastic. I would really like to be involved operationally. Not knowing what that really means, because most of my life had been as a financial advisor or running an investment company or managing capital, right? So, 4.5 years in, I'll say, look, managing people, product, process is really hard. I'd say I'm probably more, my skill set's probably more attuned to managing capital. But I haven't had this much fun and this much satisfaction in doing something. So look, I think, like with any experience in life, whether it's the joy of becoming a parent or trying something different, I've really kind of enjoyed the learning curve of being an operator. I've always been mission driven with the mission, so that was easy. I have kind of a scrappy startup mindset in general, so that fit well. But yeah, I don't know if at the end, if there's some kind of monetizing event with Amira in a year or two, if I'm going to continue to stay in the edtech space or in the early literacy space, or I'll find another problem to solve. But I like this idea of trying to solve big problems, working with the best and brightest people, certainly people that are smarter than me, and trying to help solve those problems. And I don't know if it's going to be in the form of capital or as an financially oriented or as an operator. But right now, I'm loving this role of being, the chief strategy officer of the company.
Love it. I was going to say, isn't it interesting how when you're figuring out who you are, school, college, all that, there's this, and you mentioned it earlier, these people already know what they want to be, and there's this internal fear that these people are smarter than me, right? And who am I, right? But then you get to a certain point in life, and I'm at that point as you are, where it's like, I love people around me that are smarter than me.
Exactly.
I was like, I want to learn from these people.
I remember
and it's I don't want to hire people that are dumber than me. I was like, hey, I want, because it's like,
it's interesting, right? When I was 21, 22, when I was at Trilogy, up until then, I felt like I was always like one of the smartest guys in the room, right? In high school and college. And then you go to this company where you're around these brilliant engineers and computer scientists, and I'm not even the average. I'm below average. It was really hard for me to deal with that environment. Like, it was depressing, right? And now kind of stepping into Amira, again, not being a former educator, not being a data scientist, you could easily see someone stepping into a role of like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Very different mentality. It's awesome. Like, I'm bringing the skill sets that I have of, helping grow companies, but I'm surrounded by really smart people who are also kind. And it's great. Like, it's a different mentality, but I don't know if I would have had this mentality 20 years ago.
Right. Well, the other part of this that I recognize is the different level of intelligence, because, one of my co-founders is a rocket scientist, right? and he's incredibly knowledgeable about so many things, right? And so, but what's really interesting in working with people of that level, and I've got others that I work with as well, is that you can respect the knowledge they have, but then you can also see what you bring to the table.
Yeah,
so you actually can say, okay, well, that's amazing, but here's where I fit in. It's the relationships, it's the way to the vision and everything else.
He's the public speaking person. He's the person with the relationships, and
so.
But you're also very perceptible. Like, you can tell things about someone pretty quickly after having a few questions or a few minutes of conversations, that I think is maybe your superpower. I don't know you well enough yet to know that, but it seems like that's a talent of yours, that you see people pretty quickly, right?
Well, thank you. I was just going to try and make the comment that in this scenario, you don't necessarily feel bad about not having all that knowledge. You kind of feel excited. You feel excited that you're a piece of the puzzle.
Right.
That's right. Here's where I fit.
Right.
So, anyway, with that, thank you so much for joining us. This was
pleasure.
A wonderful conversation.
Really
wonderful conversation, and can't wait to share it with everyone else. And I've got some of the notes that you sent my way. We'll post that as well.
No worries. Sounds great.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Uncharted Your Sidekick for Life. Big thanks to Ashish Gupta for sharing his story from Wall Street to literacy tech, and for reminding us that fulfillment doesn't come from the biggest paycheck, but the biggest impact. If this episode lit a spark, send it to someone who needs it. Leave us a review, subscribe, and don't forget to explore more stories at foundingup.com/un-charted-podcast. Are you Gen Z with a story that needs to be heard, or a thought leader helping others navigate uncharted paths? We're always looking for bold, honest voices. Email us at info@foundingup.com or check out the show notes for details on how to pitch yourself or someone inspiring you know. See you on the next one.